Hello, my name is Dr. Guillermo Escalante, and I am the coordinator for First Aid and CPR over at the Disability Sports Festival. Thank you very much for your interest in becoming a First Aid CPR volunteer, and we look forward to having you join us for this great event that has been a tradition at CSUSB for over a decade now. We're looking forward to having you be part of the team. If you've been here before, thank you for coming back, and if this is your first time, welcome here. What I'd like to touch on today is discussing the first aid and CPR protocol. This is a training video that all first aid CPR volunteers will be required to listen to. We're going to try to keep it short and sweet. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you, and I have a PowerPoint attached to it. Please pay close attention because there will be an actual exam, just a short quiz at the end of the video, and it's going to be related to information that I give or that is on the PowerPoint. So make sure you listen carefully, maybe take a little bit of notes, and also pay attention to the PowerPoint screen because the questions that are on there are going to be related to the presentation here. Okay, it's very important because participant safety is going to be our #1 concern, and we want to make sure that everybody has a wonderful event. And don't mind Arnold Schwarzenegger in the back. This is my office, and if you guys know me, you know that I'm a bodybuilder. So don't mind Mr. Schwarzenegger back there. He's just going to be watching over us. This is my home office. So let's go ahead and have a little fun. I'm going to go ahead and share the screen with you, and we'll move along. Okay, so again, this is the Disability Sports Festival First Aid Volunteer Training, and I'm Dr. Guillermo Escalante. We're going to go ahead and move on here to the next slide. So a little bit about what is the Disability Sports Festival. Well, basically, it's a one-day sports and physical activity event for any person, and notice any is in big bold letters there, for any person with any disability, because we don't discriminate on any disability. We actually welcome everyone. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't matter what disability you have. We welcome everybody with open arms. So we welcome any person with any disability and an educational experience for participants, their families and caregivers, and students or community members. So really, this is a one-day event where we really try to get everyone involved. And it's a great opportunity for our students to actually provide a volunteer service that is really, it goes such a long way. It's something that you carry on for the rest of your life, and it can actually help your future career plans. It really feels really good to help all of these people and be able to provide something for them that they can't find elsewhere. As well as integrated with the families. And we have a ton of community members. We've had senators, we've had assembly members, the president of the university usually comes. We've had professional baseball players come. So we really try to engage a lot of people from the community to come to support this one-day event. A little bit about the purpose of the Disability Sports Festival. It's basically three things. #1, to increase the quality of life and health of people with disabilities by introducing them to sports and physical activity opportunities. So very often, a lot of people with disabilities, they don't have the opportunities to participate in sport or physical activity. And we like to give them that opportunity to be able to do that. And leading a sedentary lifestyle, not only is that bad for the general population, but for people with disabilities, it can add a lot of health problems if they're not physically active. So we really like to encourage and educate them. #2 is to raise awareness of disability sport and physical activity to the community. So we just like to make the community aware, to let them know that there are resources for people with physical and mental disabilities available to them, and we try to connect those resources. And also let them know that there is a need for this particular population in these type of services. Lastly, we would like to provide a service learning opportunity for California State University San Bernardino students to learn how to enhance the quality of life of people with disabilities. So one of the big parts of being a university student here at California State University, San Bernardino, is really to grow as a person and to be able to give back to the community. So here is an opportunity for you to be able to give back to this population that is often underrepresented and underserved. And it's a great opportunity to be able to do that. So what happens on the day of the event? Well, it takes more than 10 months of planning and organizing to go into this event. And there's a very good team of dedicated faculty members, staff, and student volunteers that actually help to make this happen. So literally from the time the festival finishes, within 1 week, we actually meet and we actually try to start figuring out what went right, what could go better, get some input, and then we start slowly formulating ideas for the following year. So it's a big deal, and it takes a lot of time and dedication. And you guys are a big part of it. Without the volunteers, this actually could not happen. What happens on the day of the event? Well, we have Paralympic coaches and athletes to teach people of all ages. And we've had people come from ages 8 months to as old as 84 years old with disabilities in various sports, including wheelchair basketball, quad rugby, wheelchair tennis, soccer, basketball, softball, hand cycling, swimming, kayaking, track and field, wall climbing, and more. We often have different events every year. We get a lot of feedback from our athletes, and we try to provide as many opportunities as possible for them. And we actually try to have people with disabilities often try to coach them just so that the athletes can see that there really is no reason for them not to be able to participate. And this slide's a little tough to read here, but the main goals of the Disability Sports Festival, number one is all athletes will be safe. So you as a first aid CPR volunteer, this is your number one concern. We want to make sure everybody's safe. We want to make sure that everybody's having fun. Therefore, we want to make sure that you provide excellent customer service skills. We want you to be friendly, go above and beyond to provide the best experience for the people. Number three, we want all athletes to have the opportunity to participate in any of the activities that are offered at the festival, as long as it is safe for them and for others. So we really don't like to limit people unless there is a safety concern. We really like them to try anything and everything that they can do, and we'll do the best we can do to make sure that they can do that. We want all athletes to have at least one success in each activity that they attempt. So we want them to be able to succeed and show them that they can actually do whatever activity they're trying to do. We want all athletes to receive information about ways to adapt sports to their needs. So again, there are modifications we can make with equipment, with technique. So there's a lot of ways in which we can modify activities so that they can actually perform that activity. We want all athletes to receive information about where they can continue participating in physical activities. So we often try to connect them to other resources where they can maybe continue doing kayaking or swimming or wall climbing. And despite the disability that they may have, it doesn't mean that they can't do it. We try to connect them to resources where they're able to do those activities. Really important is we want to treat all people equally. So again, it's easy to discriminate, and we often think of discrimination in terms of the color of our skin or the color of our sex or our sexual orientation. But another way we can discriminate sometimes is by by some of these disabilities. And we don't want to do that. We want to treat them as a person. And we're going to talk about that here as we move forward. We want athletes to receive positive coaching. So we want them to have that positive experience. We also want the athletes to receive instructional time for each sports session. So we really we have other volunteers that are going to be there. We have coaches that are there, and we like to try to get them to be able to provide some one-on-one attention if at all possible. Lastly, we want all athletes to receive appropriate accommodations for their disabilities. So again, we want to make sure that we do anything and everything we can to make sure that they're able to participate in that activity, as long as their safety is okay. We're going to talk a little bit about confidentiality, and trust is very vital when we're working with people in general, and confidentiality helps to build this trust. So really, we're going to be dealing with some sensitive information with some of our participants, so we want to make sure that that remains confidential. We're going to be asking about their medical history, their personal history, and anything that is disclosed to you should not be discussed with anyone, including other participants in the program. The only caveat to that or exception is if you're communicating relevant information to a coach, a medical professional, or another volunteer when it is for the safety and well-being of the participants. So if you're communicating a particular medical condition to a coach or another volunteer that's with regards to the safety, then that's okay. But to go ahead and talk about their particular disabilities or personal information just as a matter of conversation, that's not okay. We actually discourage that. Next, we're going to talk about empowerment. It's important for athletes to gain a sense of empowerment, and that's defined as having control over one's environment. Now, it's important for you to remember that athletes with disabilities, especially those with severe disabilities, it may be hard for them to learn that they do have control over their actions and their environment. Therefore, it is important for you as a volunteer and for our coaches to provide athletes every opportunity possible to be successful in their participation attempts. So we want to make sure that we really try to make them successful as they're able to do the activity that they're choosing to do. Person first language. This is going to be very important. The person first language refers to putting the emphasis on the person instead of on the disability. So athletes should always be referred to by their name of choice. So whatever that name is, try to refer to them by that name. When referring to a person or people with a disability, when you don't know the person's name, acknowledge an individual before their disability. So you could say the person who has X disability or a person who uses a wheelchair. So you don't want to say the disability first. You actually want to say this is a person who happens to have this particular disability. And this is very important because it's really disrespectful when you discuss someone or refer to somebody as a disabled person. They're not a disabled person. They're a person that happens to have a disability. They're not a disabled person because they are able to do a lot of things. And it's important for us to recognize that even within our verbiage. So therefore, staff and volunteers should use first person language instead of saying disabled person. It's a person with a disability. Terms such as retarded, handicapped, dumb, crippled, GIMP, disabled, etc., should not be used. And again, be sensitive of the language that you're using and how you're using it. The medical personnel in charge. Okay, so we will have a certified athletic trainer who's an allied healthcare professional, and they're trained in the triage of medical emergencies, or an emergency medical technician, or a registered nurse. They will be on duty at all times during the event. So there'll be at least one of those people in charge of the first aid tent in the headquarters. So again, they're the medical professional in charge. They will be centrally located in the athlete village under a canopy where various first aid supplies, ice, and an automatic external defibrillator can be found. So this will be considered, that canopy will be considered first aid headquarters, and it'll be in the athlete village as a central location. And they will be wearing the same red shirt that you will be wearing. So everybody will be wearing a red first aid t-shirt that will be easy to identify. And that way anybody wearing red, you know that they're a first aid CPR volunteer, okay? Next, we're going to talk about your duties. So first, we're going to have 2 volunteers who we place at each sport. So again, there are various sports, and we're going to place 2 people at each sport. At least one of the 2 people will be certified in first aid and CPR. You'll also be given 1 two-way radio to each group to communicate with the first aid headquarters if needed in the event of an emergency or any other needs or questions. You'll also be given 1 first aid kit at each sporting event. And it's important to remember that the first and last group of volunteers at each sport will be responsible for taking and returning the first aid kit from first aid headquarters to the sport and then back to headquarters. Your responsibilities. So number one, picking up the first aid kit and your two-way radio at first aid headquarters. That's primarily for the first and last set of volunteers, or returning it. Checking in with the lead medical professional, the athletic trainer, the EMT, or the nurse. So that is, when you come in to check in, you're going to check in at the first aid tent with the medical professional there, and then they're going to assign you to a particular location in sport with your particular partner. You're going to monitor athlete and coach safety. So that is your primary job, is to go ahead and monitor the athletes and the coach safety. When you get to the event, do a walkthrough to make sure that the area is safe. Make sure that, if there's anything that you see that might cause danger to somebody, maybe, for example, maybe you're walking around the softball field and you notice that there's a sprinkler head that's up. You notice that there's a pothole there, or a little divot that somebody might be able to sprain an ankle. Well, let's make sure that we take care of that to prevent that injury rather than having it occur. Okay, and then look out for anything that looks potentially dangerous. You want to make sure that you are paying attention to that and re-guiding the people in the right direction. Make sure you're helping athletes, coaches, and parents as needed with directions or answering questions. So a lot of the times as a first aid CPR volunteer, you're really waiting for an event to happen, hoping that a bad event doesn't happen. So that being said, as you're overseeing all of the activities, you may have somebody come in and ask you how to get from this sport to another sport, or they might have a question for you. So again, we want to provide the best experience. So be friendly and be polite and give them information. And if you don't know the information, then maybe call headquarters or find out the information for them where they can actually get the information that they need. In the event of an emergency, contact the athletic trainer, the EMT, and the nurse if the injury occurs. Also assist the athletic trainer, the EMT, or the nurse if there's an injury. Call 911 if a serious injury occurs, and contact the athletic trainer, EMT, nurse immediately. And we're going to talk about a protocol here shortly. And also return the first aid kit and the two-way radio to first aid headquarters. So in the event of a non-emergency, what do? Well, if you feel like you need to, go ahead and call the first aid headquarters as you see fit. We'll be happy to help you. And if you need the nurse or the EMT or the athletic trainer to come over to help you, we'll be happy to do that. If the person needs transportation, again, call the first aid headquarters and we can try to arrange that. So maybe somebody fell and they twisted an ankle and they need to be transported. Again, it's not necessarily a medical emergency, but they need to be transported. So we can arrange a golfer to go down there and pick them up. Know that ice and other medical supplies are available at the first aid headquarters, and you can refer anybody over to that first aid station if necessary. So we might have more supplies than you have in your small first aid kit. Ice being one example. So if that's the case, just go ahead and refer them up there. You can maybe escort them if you need to, and you go on up there. Now, if you're actually working with the person, let's say somebody needs a Band-Aid, something simple. It's really important to remember that we're working with people that have these disabilities, and some of them are physical disabilities, and some of them are mental disabilities. We have a lot of children and people with autism, for example. You need to be sensitive to these individuals because you need to treat them they require a little more patience often. You don't want to startle things. You don't want to not communicate what you're doing and how you're going to do it. So before you're applying anything or giving anything, first explain what you're going to do to them. Let them know, introduce yourself, try to build that relationship, let them know, hey, I know that you scraped your arm. I see that you're bleeding, so don't just go ahead and start cleaning that wound up. Let them know what you're going to do, how you're going to do it step by step. Let the person absorb it, process it, and be patient because sometimes it takes some time for these injuries, to be able to treat these injuries. And even though you're trying to help them, they often don't understand that, and they sometimes get frustrated. They're sometimes aggressive. So it's very important that you're patient and that you're communicating everything that you're doing so that they're not getting flustered and frustrated. So you can explain everything to them. They often have family members there, so that often helps. And then you can actually help them in the communication process and hopefully in calming them down. So again, just be wary that when you're dealing with some of these people with disabilities, again, you might run into some of these people that have behavioral problems, or they get frustrated, they get angry. So you just need to be patient, and the way you can help to minimize that is to explain everything before you're doing anything. Now, what happens in the event of an emergency? Well, the certified first aid CPR volunteer should tend to the situation, and you're going to follow the standard first aid CPR emergency situation protocol. So again, being sensitive of the person with the disability, as we discussed earlier, just basically do what you're trained to do. A little bit of review. Check the scene for safety. You want to make sure you're not a victim yourself. Instruct your partner that may or may not be first aid CPR certified to call the athletic trainer, the EMT, and the nurse on site, and to also call 911. So I would like you to call first the athletic trainer and the EMT. So call headquarters first. Let them know, hey, we have an emergency. This is what's going on. That should be a 10-second, 15-second call on the radio. And then immediately after that, the medical professional can make their way down. And then you can actually immediately call 911. And then you can provide care. The first aid CPR volunteer can provide care as necessary within their scope of training until further medical help arrives. So hopefully when the medical professional that's on site arrives, you can now assist. And obviously when the paramedics arrive, you can now just give information as to what was done. The person calling 911 needs to make sure that they give the dispatcher the exact location of the sport and the event, and you want to make sure that you answer all of the dispatcher's questions. Do not, under any circumstances, hang up the phone first. Let the dispatcher hang up first, so that way you can make sure that you answered all of their questions. Remember, in the case of an emergency, we always go by the letter CAB, which means circulation, airway, breathing. And most importantly, stay calm, remain in control of the situation, and that's going to be about it, okay? You know what to do. You've been trained. You've been certified. So stay calm, stay in control, and until further help arrives. So that's all we have. I want to say thank you again for being part of the process. Thank you for coming to this volunteer training and watching the video. There'll be a short quiz at the end, which you'll be able to take. And again, you do have to pass that because it gives us verification that you actually saw this whole video. And we look forward to seeing you on the day of the event. Thank you very much.